sometimes you have them in. I'm just checking. I can't see yours.
Intro.
All right, you good? You good? Okay. What'd we say? 25.
Yeah.
Today's 2-5.
Refreshing you on slope. We are going to breeze through this. In fact, the back is provided as extra practice, but I am not taking a grade on it because every single one of you should know how to do slope.
Hopefully.
I will provide the answers to the back, and you can check it. You can try a few outside of class and check them, but we're not actually going to spend time on it because you should know slope. But I realize you've slept since the last time you did slope, so let's refresh you. There are 4 types of slope. You ready? 4. How many?
4.
4.
4. 4. You have a positive slope. If it's a positive slope, then it is slanted in this direction, which looks like, if you think about it, you always read slope like a book from left to right, which means you think about it's going up as you're reading it. So you think of a person on the end of it, and they would be trekking up.
We're going up over.
This is a negative slope. 2 ways to think of it. The person would be trekking downward, or here is a quick little way to know it's negative. Can you make a capital N out of it? If you can make a capital N out of it, it has a negative slope. If you come over here and try to force yourself to make an N out of this, it does not work. And you know you can't slant it like that. That's not a true N. It's the middle portion of a capital N. If it can fit if it can be built into a capital N, it has a negative slope. These 2 are what we call special cases. These 2. That's why I wrote it, I split it between the 2 boxes, because these are the normal ones, these are the 2 special cases. I want you to think of the word boy bucks. You have to be very careful when you say that second part, or you're going to start cussing, and that we're not cussing in here.
$40.
Boy bucks, right?
$40.
Say it very carefully. Emphasize the B.
$40.
And that's enough. We don't have to keep saying it because it'll start to sound funny. Here's why Hoy bucks is helpful in the special cases. Here's what it stands for. And you may want to find somewhere where there's room to write this out, because I'm not going to write it right here. H stands for horizontal lines have a 0 slope, and the equation of a horizontal line is always y equals whatever the y value is that it's crossing. So this has a 0 slope. Actually, I'm going to write it like this. The slope is 0. It is a number.
I thought it was horizontal.
Well, it is horizontal. And I'm going to write that the equation is y equals a number. EQ stands for the equation. This is how you know when you have a horizontal line. It'll be y equals, and it's wherever it's crossing the y-axis. Vux is a vertical line, has an undefined slope, and the equation is x equals a number. So the slope is undefined, and the equation is x equals some number. Now, there's 2 techniques for finding the slope, and I've given you practice problems for both. If I give you a graph, notice the difference here. This says watch out. This says given a graph. This says given the ordered pairs. That's the difference here. If I give you the graph, you are simply going to count. It says use rise rise over run. You're going to count the rise over the run. I want you to make a note right here. Note. Always start with lowest point. Now, my Algebra 1 students who had me last year may remember this, but when you're looking at your graph, you're going to need to find any 2 points. Doesn't matter what two, as long as they're pretty. I would not want to pick, red means wrong. I would not suggest using that point or that point. You see what I'm doing there? Because they're floating in the grid in the background, so you don't know what their actual numbers are. You always want to pick 2 points that are perfectly crossing the grid, and they are given to you on this paper. There's one here, and there's one here. You did not have to use those two. There were nice ones. I don't think there's any other nice ones. There's really not. Once you find your 2 points, you are simply going to count the rise over the run, and I'm putting an asterisk here because rise implies what direction? Up. And run implies either way. So if you want to force your counting to always rise, then start with the lowest point, and it will always rise. So I'm going to start with this one. You can't start with that because then I'm not going to be rising to get to A. I'm going to be falling. I don't want that. I'm going to rise. 1, 2, 3, 4 to your level. Rows 4. Then you're running what way? This matters. Right. I went right 5, which means positive 5. So the slope would be I rose 4, I ran right 5. You try 2. Okay, you should have it. So what should I start with? Q. Start with the point lowest on the graph. You're still going to get the right answer if you count correctly and you put the correct sign with your numbers. But the phrase rise over run implies you should go up first. That's what the rise part. And then you run in the direction of where the other point is, which means now it matters which direction you're going. If you start with P, then you're falling. You just have to remember that means negative. But the way that I try to help people is to say start with the point lower on the graph, because now you will be forced to rise 3. Did y'all get that? Rise 3. Okay. Then run. Now, what way am I going? 6. I went left 6, which means negative 6. And then, of course, that is actually... Now, I'm going to show you something. This is 3 over negative 6. Y'all are going to see me when I write, like, answer keys and stuff. You're going to see me put the negative with the top number when I simplify it, and that's because it's just weird for me to have a negative on the bottom. It's fine. If your negative stayed on the bottom, that's fine. If you put your negative with the top, that's fine. This is what's not fine. Can't have more than one, because what is a negative over a negative? And that was not our slope. Our slope is definitely negative. So, Decide how you want to write your answer and just stick with it, right? But when you see mine like this, don't say, why is your 1 negative? My 1 was positive, my 2 was negative. It's the same thing. It is a negative 1/2, right? All right, 3 and 4 should take no counting. Why? They're the special cases. Remember boy bucks. Boy bucks lets you, helps you remember what slope it is. This is which one? This is vertical, so this is bucks. I don't like writing in red. I'll go with this one. No, y'all can't see that, can you?
Oh, yeah.
Abby? Alex? Brady? Can you see that? Okay. Bucks, because it's vertical, so the slope is undefined, which means it does not exist. It does not exist. So, now I want you to take it a step further. What's the equation of this line? X equals what? Go to the x-axis and look at where it's crossing, and what's the number? It's 1. This is going to help you when we hit Unit 3, which is next week, so make sure you're practicing this. All right, what special case is this one?
0.
Boy bucks. Slope is 0. That is a number, right? That's a number. Don't think undefined and 0 are the same things. They're not. Now, what's the equation here? Very good.
Can we write out 0 as a word? Or does it have to be the number?
No, it has to be the number. Definitely has to be the number.
Make sure it's 0 at the slash.
Why would you do that?
Like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Slash number.
Yeah, dude, come on.
Or is it like that?
It's like, yeah.
That one? Okay, be careful. This stands for the null set in what's called set theory, and it means empty set. So just be careful as you get higher up in your math classes. It will, when you're doing set theory, that's going to come up, and that definitely does not mean a 0. It means no elements, but it doesn't mean the number 0. So just be careful with that. Okay, now what if we have, instead of the graph, which is the easiest way and the fastest way, what if we have the numbers? Well, this is where you're going to do that formula. You should have slope memorized. Let me show you a technique for getting the slope formula without having to memorize it. Do you have this phrase memorized, rise over run? Y'all, I would think you do, right? Oh, she's sitting there. I was like, I didn't mark that person absent, but that's fine. Okay. You have rise over run memorized. Rise implies what direction again? Up. And then, or down, right, if you were doing the fall. And then run means what? Left or right. Rise over run will help you remember that you are subtracting the y's over subtracting the x's. You don't have to write this. I'm fixing to erase it. Delta, that's a delta symbol. Have y'all ever seen the airlines logo?
Oh, yeah.
For delta, it's the delta Greek letter. Delta in math means change in, which means difference. So like delta of the, let's look at this. Let's take 3 numbers. Okay, right here. The delta in the x's here is 0. Because it went from 9 to 9. There's no difference, right? It just means subtracting. The actual formula for it, this is what I do want you to write, the arrows and then the formula. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Just remember to do the y's over the x's. And the reason I have the arrows drawn is because what axis runs up and down? The y-axis, which is your indication that your y should be on top. Now, I will also suggest, write this, stack them. Where's my Algebra 1 kids? Do y'all remember? Stack them and subtract them. This is an ampersand. Y'all know what an ampersand is? It's the and sign. Stack them and subtract them. Just remember to subtract the y's first.
Okay.
It's okay.
But when you do -1 plus negative,
Well, I'm gonna
No.
subtract them.
no, I didn't. Okay, so -1 minus -2, right? 'Cause that's y.
No, because -1's a y and x is a 2. I mean, -2.
You don't have to do the y first, do you?
Yes. Y has to be on top.
But can you do,
So y'all watch, look. Stack them. Right?
right,
The reason I stack them is because where are my x's
There.
and where's my y's? So if you'll stack them, your mind won't accidentally interchange them. Like the x's go together and the y's go together. Now I'm going to subtract them. Just remember to go this minus this first, then this minus this. Here we go. Slope is. I'm going to write it. I'm not even going to do it in my head. 5 minus -1 over -2 minus 6. I didn't try to do it in my head because I don't want to complicate it. I want to write it first, and then I can go and either do it in my head or I can type it in the calculator. But it is minus, which means when you go to write it, you need to write the minus, and then if the next number is negative, then write it either that it's going to be plus, or in my case, I just wrote both of them so y'all would see why I'm fixing to get 6 on top, right? This becomes 6, this becomes -8. Y'all see that? Now reduce it, of course. 3 over -4. I'm going to put my negative on top. Yeah, you're not adding them. You know that, right? Okay. Just wanted
Because I know that 5 minus 1 is 6.
That does add, yeah. The only time it becomes an add is if you're subtracting the negative. I just don't want you to think the formula is add. Yeah, the formula is subtract. It's just if it's going to be followed by a negative, then it'll then become an add. Let's try 6. Stack them and subtract them. Remember, order matters. Y'all look at this. Red means wrong here. I've seen this before. If I subtract that direction here, then I come over here and subtract it in that direction, I'm going to get the wrong answer. You have to notice my arrows in the last one. You have to subtract in the same order, or you will get the wrong answer. So I always start over here and just subtract down, and then I just write it. I don't try to do it in my head. I just write it. What I see -3 minus 7 over -11 minus -6. Right? Doesn't matter. That would simply mean your arrows went this way, which which is okay. We will still come to the same answer. What matters is you can't reverse your order. You can't subtract this way and then come over here and subtract the opposite direction. You cannot do that.
How was
Look. This does not matter. Is that what's throwing you off? Okay. Would you agree that this is the column of x's? Yes? Would you agree this is the column of y's? Yes? Would you agree that the y's need to be on top and the x's on bottom? And we're subtracting. What do you do? Negative 3 minus 7, that's my y's. Negative 11 minus negative 6, I just wrote it. Right? Now you clean it up. That's negative 10 on top. And on bottom, this actually ends up being a addition. So it's negative 5, so the answer is 2.
okay? How I did it is I got also 10 probably.
And what is 10 divided by 5?
So it really doesn't matter which way.
That's why I said these don't matter. These do not matter. What
As
matters
long as I have Y on top and X on bottom.
as long as you have the y's on top, the x's on bottom, but then that you subtracted in the same order. And you did because you came to positive, and the answer is positive. All right, 7 and 8. Seven. What'd y'all get?
I'm gonna 0 through 6.
When you stack 7, right? And I go to subtract. Let me show you the order doesn't matter. I'm going to subtract them in this direction. I got 2 minus negative 4 over 9 minus 9. 2 plus 4 is 6 over 0, which is no. It is okay to have 0 in the top. It is no go to have 0 on the bottom. You don't go to the beach without your bottoms. Don't say unless you're in France. You also don't put eggs in the bottom of your grocery bag. So this is a no. Let me change this. This is no. Like, this hopefully will remind you, no, you cannot have 0 in the bottom, which means this is undefined. Here's how you would have noticed it. What was X in both of them? 9. Which means if you were to plot it on a grid, then it's a vertical line. So this is Bucks. This is a Bucks problem. Which means 8's probably going to be a Hoy problem. Let's do it and show you why. Hoy. I'm going to subtract this way. So my slope is -3 minus -3 over -7 minus 0. That ends up being 0 over -7, which is
Okay.
This is okay. And that means that slope is 0. This is a Hoy problem.
And with the equation, y equals 7.
Yes, it would. Not 7. No, not 7. It would be y equals -3. It's always what the number is that's repeated.
Brooklyn to the front office, please.
Got him. That was really.
That was very convincing.
I like how you didn't say your last name. She's still on government.
When we glue this to notebook paper tomorrow, we'll put the page number on it. But this is going to be page 26, I believe.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we're going to glue it tomorrow. We have, and if you want to get highlighters tomorrow and color coordinate it, you can. We've got the distance formula, and then we've got the midpoint formula. Remember, the distance formula, which is right there, is calculating the distance between any two given points. It looks almost similar to slope. It's a little bit different. You do take the x's, subtract them, but then you square it, which means it comes out positive. Then you take the y, subtract and square it, and then you add it together, and you take the square root of that. That's the distance formula. Midpoint. Guys, what does midpoint mean? Point in the middle.
Meet me halfway.
Thank you. It is the average. It is the average of the x's and the average of the y's, which should help you remember the formula. You simply add the x's, divide by 2, add the y's, divide by 2, because it's the average of two things, right? Okay. All right, let's look at some points. Look right here. We need to know the coordinates of them. What's the coordinate of this point here? -4, -4, and 4. All right, what's this point?
4, -2.
5,
-2.
-2. Okay, let's plug it into the distance formula. Y'all, the sub numbers do not matter here. They don't matter. The sub numbers. These little sub numbers do not matter because you're going to subtract the 2, but then you square it. What comes out of a squared value every time?
Positive.
A positive. So order does not matter.
Okay, so you
I always just subtract in the order it's written. I say to myself, -4 minus 5. There's my x's. Now my y's. 4 minus -2. All right, clean it up. That would be -9, correct? That would be 4 plus 2. This would be 81. This would be 36. This would be what? 117. Then you have to go to your calculator and take the square root of that. And I don't know what that is.
10.816653.
10.81. So we'll say it's approximately 10.8. Square root. Square root. Hit the second button. Second. And then the square. Look above it. You see the square root? Now type 117. 10.8. All right. Now midpoint. Plug it in. Add the x's. My x's are -4 and 5. My y's are 4 and -2. Now clean it up. What comes out on top here? On top here, careful. They got opposite signs. 1. So this is 1/2. What comes out on top here? 2. What's 2 over 2?
1.
Now it's plotted. right a half, up one, so it's right there. So there's the midpoint. This is the midpoint. I just cleaned them up.
I know, where,
4 minus 2 is 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1.
oh, okay, I know what you're
Yeah. So your practice to complete in Flex tomorrow or tonight or both is if you didn't finish the other sheet, and then to do the three distance, 3 midpoint. If you want to do the slope practice, you can. I'm gonna